Welcome back. So, did your query work? In the next part, we'll look into SPARQL queries in detail. So, a language for querying knowledge graphs, or more precisely, RDF-based graphs. So, you've seen SPARQL before in this W3C layer cake. I mentioned we talk about RDF, we covered RDFS. I briefly showed you OWL, and a language to query all of this is SPARQL. SPARQL itself is an abbreviation and stands for SPARQL Protocol and RDF Query Language. So this is a recursive acronym because the S in SPARQL stands for SPARQL itself. The current version that we're talking about is SPARQL 1.1, just like RDF, RDFS, and some other related standards. You can see from this and here that there are two different things. There is a query language and there is a protocol. So in the first part, in this section here, we are going to talk about the query language, and then later I'll give you a brief overview on the SPARQL protocol. As a side note, what's the main difference between 1.0 and 1.1? Well, there are a lot of minor extension, but one important difference is that in 1.0, it was just possible to query graphs. And since 1.1, you can also modify graphs using SPARQL. For example, you can insert or delete triples using SPARQL. So here in this introduction, I'm going to give you a first overview on SPARQL, some of the most important constructs. The goal is not to go into every single detail. You'll learn enough to get started. And then once you work in the lab and later in the project, you'll have to go to the references that I'm also giving you to look up certain details. Let's start with the first query that you can run against a knowledge graph. And one of the simplest one is describe. What describe does is you just give it a URI, and you can use it when you don't really know anything about the structure of the graph, but you want to get some information back from the knowledge graph. So for example, let's say you don't know anything about the internal structure of DBpedia. You just want to know everything it has stored about Concordia University. And then you can just say describe and give it the URI here. You can also combine this with a more complex expression. So I'll talk about the where clauses in a second, but this is something you can try out before we continue. So again, the main part here is describe. We want to know something. Here we have given the URI explicitly, and here we have a restriction on the subject. So we want to have a description of something that matches these two triple patterns here. So like before, you can use this public SPARQL endpoint. I'll talk more about possible SPARQL servers in the second part of the lecture when we come to the SPARQL protocol. So on the worksheet, we are now at task number 5. So that's the task down here. And this is simply to try out describe. This is the one that you've just seen on the slide. You can try out the first one as well. And another feature that you can see here is that SPARQL also allows namespace prefixes. So just like in Turtle, we can define a prefix like here geo, which stands for this URI here. And then we can use the much shorter version compared to before, where we use the full URI. So try this out. And more importantly, try to explain what this is actually doing. And when you're done, I'll see you in the next lecture part.